every Sunday evening from 6 to 7 p.m. for the Zen Wisdom Show. Thank you.
Welcome to the Dave Mierswa Show, the cutting-edge talk show about legal, political, and current issues. Practicing in both Wisconsin and Illinois, David Mierswa is a leading trial attorney bringing nearly 2 decades of business law, family law, personal injury, and estate planning experience to you. The Dave Mierswa Show, about the people, for the people, and bringing justice to the people. The Dave Mierswa Show, its guests, agents, and WRLR are not rendering any legal advice. All listeners are encouraged to seek legal advice from properly licensed and qualified professionals.
Welcome back to the Dave Mierswa Show. I'm your host, Attorney Dave Mierswa. I hope you are enjoying this beautiful day outside. I hope you are enjoying this radio show. You know, I want to take a second here before I get back into what I was talking about today's topic, which is estate planning, and then next week I'm going to talk about estate planning, and then I'll finish up with asset protection. You know, what is it and what do we do to protect our personal and business assets? I wanted to just take a minute here to thank all of the volunteers here at WRLR. And for a lot of you listeners, this is really a community radio station that really has the heartbeat and the soul of Lake County. And I got to say a big thank you to all of the volunteers here that come in and they do all the programming, they keep all literally the lights on in the studio. So I can come in to do my show to bring you the great information that I do. So a big thank you to them. And WRL, I thought I was on a roll there, WRLR is a non-for-profit radio station, so all of the people here are all volunteers, and you know, no one gets paid for their radio shows. So if you want, you can donate a little money to WRLR to keep this radio station going. And I tell you that the people that run this and the people that are involved, it is a big family, and it is such an honor to have a radio show here at WRLR and be a part of their family here. So if you get a chance, spread the word about WRLR, spread the word about the Dave Mierswa Show. And then also, with you friends and listeners out there, don't forget, you can download the app. There's a free app that you can listen to on your smartphone, and just put in WRLR in the search box, and then you can download, you can listen anytime. So there are so many great shows on WRLR. It is truly an amazing little powerful radio station here. Okay, getting back to the topic that I was talking about today. For those of you friends and listeners just tuning in, which I can't believe you just tuned in and you've never heard my show before. Shame on you. No, I am just happy everyone is getting some great information here, and I really hope that you're listening and you do something about your estate planning. Okay, before the break, I was just talking about the 5 or 6 documents you needed. So let me give those to you again, and then I'm going to talk about each of the documents, why they're important, and then I'm going to get into 5 or 6 steps that you got to take to enact your effective estate plan. You notice I said effective estate plan. A lot of people out there think they can do this stuff alone, and you know, make sure you employ the proper professionals to help you on this stuff. Okay, form number 1, an LRT, a living revocable trust. Next one, a will, not just any kind of will, a pour-over will. Number 3, the POA, power of attorney, either a general or a durable POA. And then the 4th document, these are kind of intertwined. You can have what's known as a living will and or a POA of health, a power of attorney for health. Then the last one, I guarantee you, 99.9999999% of estate planning attorneys do not use this form. That's because they don't know about it. And if they would use this form. It's called a HIPAA medical authorization, HIPPA, medical authorization. Let me get into the first one here. a living revocable trust. I always call it by an acronym, LRT. An LRT, living revocable trust, is a document. It's about 30, 40 pages long. And this document is probably the heartbeat of your entire estate plan, because this form keeps you out of probate court. Now, let me explain this. If you have a will, a lot of you think, well, I'll just do a will. A will does not keep you out of probate court. And for shame on you listeners just tuning in now, but if you just tuned in, I forgive you, but you got to tune in every Sunday now at 12 noon, listen to the show. But if you didn't hear me at the beginning of the show, probate court is where you must go to court when someone passes away with a will or without a will in a state above $100,000 here in Illinois, and or if they own real estate. Okay, and probate court is this expensive, long process of where you go in the court, you got to file a petition, you got to appoint an executor or an estate representative, you got to get a bond on some of the personal assets, and it's a whole myriad of things that you got to go through, and it gets very expensive. It could cost you anywhere from 3% to 10% of the estate, okay? And the attorneys love this because they get paid by the hour, and usually the case doesn't get called for at least an hour to 2 hours into the court call. And guess what? We always make $250 to $350 an hour with estate planning. Believe it or not. So we're sitting in court for 2 hours. I just made $500 literally twiddling my thumbs waiting for the case to be called. Okay, so your question is, how do I avoid paying all this money to attorneys and avoid probate court? The document is an LRT, living revocable trust. This document keeps you out of probate court. It keeps the transaction private between the attorney and the heirs and the trustee of that LRT, the living revocable trust. Here's another golden nugget. I'm so full of it today. I just made myself laugh. I am so full of these great informations, and I call them golden nuggets. And these golden nuggets of information that you're not going to get on any other show. And a golden nugget is that in the living revocable trust that keeps you out of probate. And here's another thing, the LRT keeps everything private. When you have to open up an estate in probate court, it's a matter of public knowledge. So everyone can go in there and see what all the assets are. And attorneys go in there, and then they get letters to all the heirs, and they send out letters to them saying, hey, do you need representation and all that? So an LRT, living revocable trust, keeps it out of probate, and it keeps that transaction private. Okay, the next one is what's known as a pour-over will. A pour-over will, P-O-U-R, okay? And anything that doesn't hit the trust, okay, any assets that aren't administered through the LRT, then they pour over to the will. That's why it's known as a pour-over will. Starting to make a little sense? Okay, and then the next one is a power of attorney. While you are alive, okay, but you may be rendered unconscious, either from a car accident, or let's say that you're in a car accident, you're conscious, but then they started administering drugs to you, okay, and for pain. All of a sudden, you're thinking you're on cloud nine. Life's pretty good with all of these IV painkillers coming through, and you don't know it, but you just lost capacity to make medical decisions and to make decisions on your person estate and your financial estate, okay? And there's questions of whether you have legal capacity to do that. And a power of attorney, either a durable power of attorney or a general power of attorney, allows a third party, a loved one, and a trusted person. Let me say that again. It's got to be someone that you can trust, that can go in and enact the power of attorney and start to pay all your bills, to run your financial estate, and take care of you while you are rendered unconscious or have a lack of legal capacity to make these financial and other decisions on your own. Okay, did you get that whole mouthful I just said? That's a power of attorney. And folks, if you don't have this, you cannot walk into a bank and through rights of privacy and take over to help someone else out. You can't do it. You'll have to go to a court of law. And that could take anywhere from a month, 2 or 3. Meanwhile, the house mortgage isn't being paid. Meanwhile, insurance isn't being paid. All this stuff could lapse. So that's why you need a durable and or general power of attorney. Okay, the next one is same scenario. You are driving down the street and you're hit by a truck. Somehow you survived. Somehow you survived the truck accident. But again, you are rendered unconscious, or they are giving you, the hospital professionals are giving you and rendering you drugs for good reason, because you'd be screaming, from all the pain. And a power of attorney for health and or living will helps a third party, a family, and let me say again, a loved one. It's got to be a loved one and or someone that you mostly trust to make power of decision for health over you, power of decision for health and medical over you. Should you get that operation? Should they put you on life support? Should they keep the ICU going? Okay, and if you don't have this form, and if this person does not step up on your behalf, then you leave it to the medical professionals and the insurance company to keep you alive. I've seen this so many times, folks. It's amazing. And I don't make this stuff up. I had a case where the gentleman kept delaying the will and the power of attorney for health for his wife and some of his loved ones. And he knew it. He had stage 4 cancer. He knew it. But he thought that if he signed the stuff, he would die quicker. So he didn't face his ultimate demise. And we almost had to go into court because this gentleman was put on ICU, intensive care unit, in life support. And luckily, my client, who was this gentleman's wife, found an old power of attorney. So that managed enough to get him disconnected to the ICU, okay, and the life support. And I had another client of mine who lost capacity. She went into the hospital thinking I was only going to be there a couple of days, and then the rest, she didn't really have that big of a family. And then she went in and was on life support. They wouldn't turn it off. And then eventually they did. And, I stepped in and, made some decisions for her. But can you imagine that you're unconscious? And let me tell you, these hospitals, there's a lot of hospitals and a lot of insurance companies. I'm not saying they're all evil, but what do for-profit insurance companies do, and what do insurance profit-driven hospitals do? That's right. They like to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. But guess what? When you're unconscious, they're going to, and if you got insurance and they know that, man, they're going to run that bill up $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. And if you don't have an attorney of health to make these decisions about the quality of life of that individual, to have it shut off, then the ICU and the life support could remain on. And that costs anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 a day or more. I'm telling you. And you could wipe out whatever estate money you thought was going to go to your grandkids for college, could get wiped out in a heartbeat. Okay. The last one here is a HIPAA medical authorization, HIPAA authorization. And you say to me, why is this important? Okay, same scenario, folks, where you are driving along, vroom, 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 you're driving along in your 1968 Cutlass. Yes, and it's a hot rod. And you're driving along, all of a sudden a semi blows right through a red light, KOs you. I mean, twists your car upside down, just like in the movies. And all of a sudden, you are rendered unconscious. or you're coming in and out of conscious state of mind. They transport you via ambulance to a local medical center, okay? And let's say that this local medical center has a long history of malpractice and not so good tactics, okay? And let's just say you know that. And let's just say that you're called to the scene and you don't have this HIPAA authorization. And then you feel you do have the power of attorney for health, but you want to make these decisions for your client and or your loved one, but you can't get access to the medical records. Here's another part of that scenario. You're at one hospital and they're saying they got to do some kind of open surgery on that individual to keep them alive. Okay, and you're trying to get a second or third medical opinion by a specialist in that field. And let me tell you folks, that each hospital has what's known as hospital rights. Each doctor has to ascertain hospital rights to go walk into that hospital to see that client. And if you don't have those hospital privileges, that doctor will not be allowed in to render any medical advice that you're seeking. Here's the thing is, you want to get those medical records from that hospital so you can have a second or third professional render an informed medical opinion as to the state and quality of your loved one who's sitting there unconscious. Okay? And that is just the normal and reasonable thing to do. How are you going to get those medical records? You think you're just going to walk in to a hospital? They guard those records under the HIPAA Act. Okay? And they are guarded. The hospital does not want to be sued. Okay? So this HIPAA medical authorization has to be signed before by that person. That allows you to get medical records from that hospital and other doctors so you can gather all these medical records and forms and then give that to a second or third doctor for an immediate opinion. Okay? So those are the 5 main documents that I talked about. So let me repeat again what they are, just so we could wrap up. I got about 3 or 4 minutes left in the show. So the first one, Living Revocable Trust and LRT, that's a document that keeps at a probate court that I've been talking about all today. Okay, and it saves you money from a lawyer going through probate, a full probate court. And number 2, it keeps the transaction private. Okay, and then the next one is the pour-over will, which anything that doesn't go through or administered through the LRT, the Living Revocable Trust, then it hits the pour-over will. So kind of see that it hits the trust, and if not, it pours over to the will. Okay, if that makes sense. The third document, a durable power of attorney or a general power of attorney. And this allows a person, while you are unable, either unconscious or you're taking medicine and you don't have the capacity, the legal capacity to make these decisions, that a loved one or someone, most importantly, that you trust can make these decisions for you. That's a durable or general power of attorney. And the fourth one is in a power of attorney for health and or a living will. And this is also known as a do not resuscitate. Okay? You can put that if I'm not going to have a high quality life, then I don't want to live. And then they can not put you on ICU life support system, or they can take you off that. So that's the power of attorney for health and or living will. Okay, the last document is what I just talked about, what's known as a HIPAA authorization. Okay, I got about 3 minutes left in the show. And I just want to wrap up here. A couple of notes here. Okay, next Sunday, I'm going to continue on talking about asset protection, and I'm going to finish up on estate planning. I gotta go over the 5 or 6 steps that you gotta do in your estate plan. I went over all the documents that typically is used in a living revocable trust. Okay, and then next week, I'm going to get into what's asset protection and why is it important, why should you use it, and then more importantly, how how and why to have a plan for this. And as I started off the show, that estate planning and asset protection are a marriage together. One without the other doesn't work. Okay, it does, but an experienced attorney uses both asset protection and estate planning. All right? And then next week, I'm going to go over the 5 or 6 steps that you have to take to have an effective legal asset protection plan and estate plan. Okay, so that's coming up next Sunday, 12 noon. And then I'll probably get into a couple other topics. And then don't forget, folks, no need to worry. This show is uploaded to my website. I've thrown a lot of information at you, and you can go to my website to listen to the show. That's law540.com, law540.com. Also, I wrote an article entitled Why a Will Can Make Your Family Go Broke. Something like that. No, it's why a will can cost you your family's fortune. Yeah, that's the name of it. And again, that's posted on the resource page at law540.com, law540.com. And then also, all of my shows are uploaded to YouTube within a couple of days. So go to YouTube and type in the Dave Mierswa Show, Dave Mierswa, Mierswa, and this show and all my shows starting this past January are posted there. Okay, so folks, got just a couple of seconds here left in the show. I wanted to thank you and your listeners for tuning in today. This topic is so important. Estate planning and asset protection is so important. I urge you to do something about it. If you're out looking at your kids today, this is kind of a wake-up call for you to do something about it. Prince didn't have one, and his family is going to be going through a lot of legal turmoil because he didn't have one. Okay, folks and friends and listeners, I am out of here. I'm going to enjoy this day. I will be back next Sunday, 12 noon. You take care of yourself and your friends and your family now.